So reboots are a thing in pretty much all mediums, and anime is no exception. It's a pretty big topic in the anime community, and most anime fans have at least one anime they think should get a reboot, or as a lot of people like to call it, the Brotherhood treatment, which basically stems from the anime Fullmetal Alchemist and Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. Fullmetal Alchemist first got adapted into an anime in 2003, but at the time there wasn't enough content in the manga to really adapt, so it kinda had to go in its own route. But 6 years later in 2009, the same studio, Studio Bones, rebooted the series into Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, and this version would go on to adapt the manga from start to finish. And later it would not just be considered one of the greatest anime reboots, but just overall one of the greatest anime of all time. And since then, many people have wondered if there's ever going to be an anime that could replicate this. Now there has been a lot of anime reboots since Brotherhood first came out. Some are great, some are not so great. We typically don't talk about those. And there are a lot of anime that I personally would love to see get reboots, but there's one that me and a lot of other people think deserves one, and that's Soul Eater. Soul Eater was first published in Monthly Shonen Gangan back in 2003, which is actually the same magazine that Fullmetal Alchemist was published in. The series would later get an anime adaptation in 2008 by Studio Bones, which if you remember, that was also the studio who did the Fullmetal Alchemist adaptations. The story takes place in a place called Death City, and in Death City there's a school called the DWMA, and this is where the main characters go to school at. The DWMA stands for Death Weapon Meister Academy. A weapon is a person who can basically turn into a specific weapon, and a Meister is the person who basically wields that weapon. And this may sound kind of weird, but the series makes it seem so cool. Anyways though, on to the main cast. Our first two main characters are Soul and Maka. Soul is the weapon of the pair and he's able to turn into a scythe, while Maka is the Meister. The two characters have a pretty interesting dynamic. They may argue a lot, but you can tell deep down they really care for each other. On top of that, both characters have really cool designs, which you're probably going to hear me say that a lot this video. Anyways though, the next characters we got are Black Star and Tsubaki. Tsubaki is the weapon of the pair and she's able to turn into a chain scythe, though she is able to transform into other things like a shuriken, a sword, and even a fake version of Black Star. And Black Star is the Meister of the pair. Now, whereas Tsubaki is more calm and quiet, Black Star is loud and has a huge ego, though he is still one of my favorite characters and he's a real badass when it comes to his fights. Black Star and Tsubaki overall have a great dynamic, and again, just another pair of characters who have really cool designs. Also, I just want to mention Black Star's OST goes crazy. Like, just listen. And last but not least, our last group of main characters, which is actually a trio this time, is Death the Kid and Liz and Patty. Death the Kid is the son of Death, who's basically the principal of the DWMA. Compared to all the other characters, he's a lot more serious, and he must have OCD because he really cares about symmetry. Liz and Patty are his two weapons, and they're able to transform into pistols. And again, just more cool characters with even cooler designs, especially Death the Kid. He has one of my favorite ones in the entire series. And there are a bunch of other characters. For example, you have Stein, who's one of the teachers at the academy. You have Medusa, who's basically the main antagonist for most of the anime, along with her child Krona, who also has their own weapon named Ragnarok. There are also a few other students from the academy that frequently appear, like Killick and Ox, and there are a bunch of other characters that I could mention, both protagonist and antagonist, but I'm gonna try and keep this as spoiler free as I can. But now that you've been introduced to the main characters of the show, I want to go over the story. The series starts off as a typical Monster of the Week type of series, sort of like early Bleach and Yu Yu Hakusho, but as we get introduced to more characters and we learn more about them, the story slowly shifts. The stakes start to rise and the story gets a lot more interesting. And without getting into too many spoilers, let's just say things get wild pretty fast. Now that we've gone over the characters and the story, I want to go over a few other things that I really do enjoy about this anime. Starting off with the aesthetic. I went over in my Samurai Champloo video, go watch if you haven't already, that I really do enjoy a good aesthetic in an anime. And Soul Eater does not miss the mark. The series has a huge Halloween aesthetic to it. You can see this a lot in the character designs, especially with the Kishin. And even Death City itself is just full of Halloween vibes. And it reminds me a lot of Halloween Town from Nightmare Before Christmas. Plus, since it's almost October, this will be a good anime to watch right before Halloween. Another thing I really do want to mention is the animation. I mentioned earlier that this anime was animated by Studio Bones, and just from that fact alone, that should basically tell you everything you need to know about the show's animation. The staff went absolutely crazy when they were animating this series. Like, for an anime that came out in 2008, literally 15 years ago, there is no reason this should be looking this good. In my opinion, the animation is at its best during the fights. The choreography and animation techniques used for these fights give the characters so much life and just look so good visually. For example, whenever Death the Kid is fighting with his pistols, his movements are so clean. Same thing could be said for Maka during her fights. Just overall smooth and clean animation that's visually pleasing to watch. Now I know a lot of y'all are probably scratching your heads wondering just how does this anime need a reboot? Looking back on everything that I mentioned, the characters, the story, aesthetic, OST, and animation, it seems like Soul Eater is a solid anime, and it honestly is. But there's a major problem with it. Actually two. Earlier I mentioned that the Soul Eater manga was published in the same magazine company as Fullmetal Alchemist, meaning that the chapters of the manga only came out monthly, and by the time the anime came out, there wasn't enough content in the manga to fully adapt into 52 episodes, so the anime kinda had to go in its own route. And this leads to the second major reason, the show's ending. The ending of the Soul Eater anime is still a controversial topic to this day. I won't spoil it for those who haven't seen it yet, but a lot of people who have were not satisfied with the ending. Some people go even as far as to say that it ruined the whole show. And while I do disagree with this, I do understand the dissatisfaction towards this ending. Personally, I'm not even the biggest fan of it either, though I can't really be mad at Studio Bones since, like I said earlier, there wasn't enough manga material to cover anymore. But these two major problems are the reasons why me and a lot of other people really want the series to get rebooted. It's been over 10 years since the Soul Eater manga first ended, giving us a total of 25 volumes and 117 chapters. However, the anime only covers about 10 of those volumes, meaning that there's still way more than half of the manga that hasn't been adapted into an anime yet. There are entire characters and storylines that have yet to be shown in an anime format, making Soul Eater one of the most demanded anime to get a reboot even to this day. Now the real question is, what are the chances of Soul Eater actually getting a reboot? And personally, I'm not really sure if it'll ever get one, but it's definitely not impossible. Soul Eater is still one of the most popular anime of all time, and it has a really strong fan base. Also, one thing I haven't mentioned in this entire video is the creator of the series, the creator of it being Atsushi Okubo, who's been making manga even before Soul Eater. But after finishing the manga for Soul Eater, he would make another series a few years after, one that I'm pretty sure most of you guys are familiar with, and that series is Fire Force, which the anime for it is still ongoing, and will be receiving a third season some point within the next year. On top of that, the studio that made Fire Force, David Productions, released some visuals a few months back for a Fire Force mobile game, and it was a collab between both series. And I'm not saying any of this guarantees that there's going to be a Soul Eater reboot, there's just a few things I thought would be really cool to mention. Anyways though, Soul Eater is a series that I've been wanting to make a video on for a while now. It was one of the first shows I watched when I first got into anime, and it's always just been a really cool series looking back at it. So the fact that it hasn't gotten the Brotherhood treatment yet is really unfortunate. And there is Soul Eater not, but to be completely real with y'all, it feels like an entirely different show, and it's definitely nowhere near the quality of the original series. You know what, honestly, let's just act like this thing doesn't even exist for real. But anyways, no matter how low the actual chances of it getting the Brotherhood treatment may be, it will forever be a show that I personally think deserves a reboot. But with all that being said, I think I'm going to end the video here. Do you guys agree with me that Soul Eater should be rebooted? And is there another anime out there that you personally think deserves to get the Brotherhood treatment? Anyways though, if you made it this far into the video, I hope you enjoyed. Please like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. It would be greatly appreciated. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you all in the next video.